UIC.
Freedom the people of
Hell
need.
yeah.
Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah,
Yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man.
Hi, good evening, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. This is Joseph Patterson speaking, and this evening I want to talk to you about a recent interview I did just a few minutes ago on CVM. I was called last minute to join the panel with Mr. Lloyd B. Smith, and the topic was the Prime Minister's recent trip to the Bahamas, paid for by Sandoz. And the discussion was around whether or not the Prime Minister did something wrong. I want to make it clear that Adam Stewart and Sandoz didn't do anything wrong, but the Prime Minister definitely acted unethically and demonstrated a lapse in judgment. And it's not the first time he has demonstrated these lapses. In fact, he has demonstrated them far too often. But good night, everyone, and welcome to another short. This is going to be very short tonight. I'm not going to stay very long, but I just wanted to do a little bit of a follow up because the interview or the discussion on CVM was so short. You don't get into some of the nuances that we need to talk about. But good night. Welcome, Ken Francis, Douglas Harper. Good night, Asha and Tanya Thelwell. Good to see you on. Craig McKenzie as well. So I'll take a few questions tonight, but first and foremost, I just want to elaborate on this discussion I had a while ago with CVM. It's it's interesting when I get these calls because, as you know, I don't get too many calls from the television stations or the radio stations to do anything on them. So it's always a surprise when I get such a call. So I got this call late this evening. They apologized for inviting me at the last minute. So I didn't get a chance to prepare for it because I was busy all day with work, and I got the call and then I accepted because I think the Jamaican people do need to hear from the UIC. They need to hear what our positions are. They need to hear what our thoughts are on the different things that are happening in our country. And many things are happening. And one of the latest things is the fact that the Prime Minister decided to allow Sandals Resort to pay for his trip to go to the Bahamas for a ribbon cutting event. Now, of course, nothing is wrong with the Prime Minister, or more appropriately, the Minister of Tourism, to participate in activities like these. It's just a matter of where do you draw the line? Who pays for it? And what is the value of that trip to the Jamaican people? And what kind of influence might be set up in terms of having a private entity funding your travels and giving you treats and gifts and so on. So I want us to be very careful on that. The UIC's position is that no government minister, let alone the Prime Minister, should take any gifts at all from anyone by virtue of their office. So, and they have to be very careful to create, you know, a semblance and an appearance of independence. Remember, the Prime Minister and our ministers and our parliamentarians are involved in making laws and setting policies that affects all of us. And what you don't want is for um, some segment of society to be able to bribe or otherwise influence our political leaders to act on their behalf instead of acting on the behalf of all Jamaicans in general. And this is why it's so important that the system that the UIC is proposing for government be implemented as soon as possible. We need to have good governance. We need to have proper checks and balances. We need to protect ourselves and guard against these kinds of shady situations. But let's be clear, Adam Stewart and the Sandals Group has done nothing wrong. Uh, they offering to pay for the prime minister or giving the prime minister or any minister of government or any politician a gift of any kind is their prerogative. It is up to the politician, the prime minister in this case, to recognize the conflict of interest and to say no. Now, why is it okay for, in my opinion, for a company to offer such gifts to politicians and government ministers and senior persons in our government? Because they know others are doing it. And so if they are not going to be a part of the game, then they're going to put themselves at a disadvantage. And that is the problem when you have a corrupt system by design. And the system that we have right now is very corrupt by design. And so everybody in the system have to play the system. So you can't just sit there and sit on your hands and say, okay, I am not going to seek to align myself and a preferential position for myself as a business. Now, I'm not saying that this ought to be the case and it should not be the case, but it is the case. And so let's say Sandoz decide or any other company decides that they are not going to seek to influence our political leaders, then they're going to be left out in the cold because their counterparts are going to be seeking to influence political leaders. So this is very important for us to understand. So I do not lay any blame at all at the feet of Sandals or Adam Stewart or anybody within the Sandals network or any other business that seeks to influence our government. It is our responsibility as a people to ensure that we have a system of governance that prevents and outlaws such influence peddling so that what applies to one business applies to all businesses. So no business would have the privilege of being able to influence government by giving gifts to politicians. So I hope you can understand that. It's really very important that we realize what obtains now and what that does to our behavior as citizens. Yeah. So if you know that the system currently exists, allows you to influence politicians to act in your favor, and you choose not to participate in that system while your competitors are competing in that system, then your competitors are going to have a competitive advantage over you, right? Because they are participating in that bad system to benefit themselves, their company, while you're choosing not to participate in the system. Yeah. So our position must be that of let's fix the system of governance and let's speak to the judgment of those who currently occupy our government. Now, Andrew Holness has shown over the years that he has a big problem with ethics and morals and judgment. You see that fully on display again here with the Sandals Bahamas situation. You would have also seen the same thing happening much earlier in his tenure, where he orchestrated the signing of undated resignation letters by senators. By him doing this, he places his senators in an awkward position whereby if they do not do what he says, he simply dates the resignation letter and accepts it, and they're immediately dismissed from the Senate. This is the Prime Minister trying to get around the limited checks and balances that were in place to try to keep senators somewhat independent. Okay? That was a serious lapse in judgment and speaks to a serious character flaw in the Prime Minister. You also saw the same thing again raise its head in the issue of the appointment of the Chief Justice, where he decided to make the Chief Justice a temp employee as opposed to making an outright appointment. And the goal here is to ensure that he was able to control and manipulate the Chief Justice, which would undermine the judiciary of our government by virtue of the Chief Justice being on a temp contract, which he can withdraw at any time. Why am I telling you these things? I'm showing you a pattern that the Prime Minister does not have a moral compass. He does not have a ethical framework that guides him, or maybe his ethical framework is one of a lower standard. And so we have to be very careful about what he does and what we allow him to do, because he has a tendency to go out on the deep end when it comes on to respecting laws and having a moral compass that he's guided by. You also saw the same lapse in judgment around the issue of the National Identification System, or NIDS, where he tried to pass a bill that clearly would compromise the privacy um, and constitutional rights of the Jamaican people, and yet still he did everything possible to push that through. Fortunately, the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, you can't do that, and he was stopped from doing that. The Prime Minister consistently demonstrates a lack of judgment, or a lack of a moral compass, or a lack of the appropriate ethics in terms of making decisions. Now, that was fully on display during this crisis, the medical crisis that we faced and we're still facing over the last 2 years. You saw where he had serious lapse of judgment in terms of how he uh, brought into force draconian laws and measures that ravished the economy of the small man, right? So it destroyed the small operators while protecting big business and big players in the marketplace. For example, he would allow big cruise ships to come into Jamaica and tourists to come into Jamaica. So they're free to enjoy Jamaica, while the Jamaican people are on the lockdown and they're not free to enjoy their own country. You'll see where he allowed big chain supermarkets to be opened, while small corner shops were suppressed. You'll see where he made disparaging comments about um, uh, the people who buy the big Jilla oil and the quarter bread and so on, demonstrating a lack of appreciation and sympathy and empathy for the very problem that his government, his party, and the other has created over the years. So, so here again, we saw the same thing happening. Uh, we have a question here from Michael White. He's saying, how can person work in government all their life and gain so much wealth and never one day work in private sector? That's a good question. Now, there are answers to this which we're supposed to take and accept according to those who propose them. Is that, the prime minister didn't acquire these wealth. It's his spouse who acquired them, and he's sharing in it, and so on. But then again, it raises more questions, because you see where the prime minister himself set up his company outside of Jamaica to hold property inside of Jamaica. And you'd ask why? Why, you being a lawmaker, a key law? The prime minister has been in politics for some 25 years now. as a member of parliament, and he chose over that time to structure his financial affairs so that the company holding his assets here in Jamaica is resident overseas. Um, Clearly, it's a tax planning strategy to avoid taxation, but why would you want to avoid the taxation that you are influencing and using to impact the people of Jamaica? Why wouldn't you want to subject yourself to the same tax laws that you are forcing the rest of us in Jamaica to observe, and which many Jamaicans don't have the ability to set up complex tax planning structures to avoid local taxation. So again, you see there a long-standing lapse in judgment of the Prime Minister. So it continues. Let me see if I can take any other questions. Any other questions or comments? Is Holness being controlled by the World Economic Forum? Jeremy Hood, Daniel is asking. Jeremy, it appears as if almost all the leaders of the various countries are being controlled by the World Economic Forum in terms of the policies that they are implementing on their people. You see that happening significantly in Canada right now, and right here in Jamaica, you see where the the prime minister and the government has been pretty much in lockstep with the global response to the medical crisis that came upon us. He seemed to follow the playbook verbatim. In fact, even now, when many countries are beginning to ease up of the pressure, our government seems to be very consistent in wanting to pressure the people as much as possible. So it's very likely that he is. In fact, recently we discovered that there are persons from both political parties who are represented at activities that are being conducted by the World Economic Forum. One of these days, I'll give you a list of the names of all such persons, but you can do a search for yourself through the World Economic Forum's information online, and you will see where they have training sessions for politicians and other activities that some Jamaican politicians from both of the two major parties are there. You won't find anybody from the UIC there because we're very opposed to that kind of thing. Carlene Jones is asking, he's a private sector puppet, do as I say. Basically, he has no say. He's not for the poor majority. Carlene, you have a point. The current system we have, political parties are heavily funded by the private sector, and particularly a small subset of the private sector, because the truth is we're all a part of the private sector, all of us, right? But you have those who are major players who control the system, and they make huge contributions to the two political parties. And so, in effect, all the laws and regulations you see in Jamaica reflect two sets of people. It reflects the international elites, the global elites who control our government, or the local elites who control our government. The laws and regulations you see in Jamaica are not designed to protect the interest of the Jamaican people at large. They're designed to protect the business elite from the people of Jamaica. If you look closely at the laws, of course, they name them, they give them nice fancy names to suggest that they're laws to protect us and protect the people in general, but they're not. Practically all the regulations that you see on the business front, for example, are designed to protect big business and suppress small business, and it's very easy to do that. You simply make a law that you says is to protect the public interest, and put into that law mechanisms that makes it difficult for the small man to succeed in that system. And so over time, you create more and more oppression while saying you're trying to protect the public interest. And gradually, you make the big man richer and richer and the small man poorer and poorer. That has been going on forever, you know. Um, Jeremy says, so I am very opposed to the WEF dictates. Absolutely, Jeremy. We must all oppose the World Economic Forum. The goal of the World Economic Forum is to make us all slaves in a nice way. So they're going to say, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. So they want to take away your property rights. When your property rights is gone, you're a slave. Slaves don't own property. Slaves are the property of other people. So you have to be very careful to guard property rights. We must guard property rights at all costs. You must be able to own property, from intellectual property to physical property to your own body, including your money. That's why we have to be very careful about this so-called central bank digital currency, CBDC, because what they're really doing is to make sure they're making sure that you will lose control of your money, and that a hidden group behind the scenes that now control our central bank, they will control our money, and when it suits them they will turn off access to it. Okay. The question from Builder: what do you think about the rising price of food and gas? I think it's horrible. And I think it's very unfortunate that when I announced publicly that the direction that the world is taking and that our government is participating in was going to lead to massive inflation. You can go back and check and see in my Facebook post and so on, from early 2020, late 2019 as well. As I saw the direction things were going, I said we're going to have massive inflation, and I advised how we could begin to plan for that and to prepare for that. But of course, our government doesn't listen to local directives unless it's from the business elite. So here we are now suffering from high food prices. Can you imagine if our politicians had made Jamaica, what you call it now, food secure, by ensuring that we had a strong, robust agricultural sector that was actually working effectively. Instead, their policies have killed off the agri sector to a great degree and make us vulnerable. Question from Michael White: do you think the Commissioner of Police should? Sorry, Michael, I missed that. Post it again. Please give Milton Matthews a call. And okay, no problem. Send that number to this number for me. Yeah, just WhatsApp that number that you want me to call to this number on the screen here, and the office will follow up. A good example of this is the marijuana of Jamaica is expensive for the average people to run, sorry, to run by overseas private sector. Bang on, Carleen. The two parties have colluded to ensure that the only people who have free access to marijuana to profit from it on a massive level are those who are wealthy. The poor, who could have, if the legislations were properly written, who could have started out small and build and become wealthier, they have been marginalized and blocked out of the market by their very own government, the same government they run and vote for when election time comes. The poor man that run out and go and vote and put him finger in the ink, the same man, the same people that went and vote for, is them designed the legislation to be against him, to block him, prevent him from being able to fully access the ganja market. There's a theory flying around that Canada is a testing ground for World Economic Forum attempt to institute a new world order, and Trudeau falls. Well, Jeremy, I don't know, but I think the right now is being a test tube. And you have different degrees, different degrees of successes in different countries. Canada is doing a massive job of trying to suppress human rights and freedoms at the moment. Stewart, Stewart Smiley says, food shortness is becoming one of the new pandemic. How would you handle such situation? Well, if I were to be government today, my immediate response to the food shortage is to make sure that we support our farmers immediately to get as much of our lands on the productions immediately. We would really see that as a public emergency, a national emergency, and make food production the number one priority. You're talking about making sure we have water access, making sure that we can get our lands tilled and farmed up quickly. You know, and you have to wait for things to grow. So you want to make sure that you are making the right choices about what you're putting in, doing proper intercropping to balance and moving away from the dependence on imported pesticides and herbicides. So it's a bit tricky at the moment because we are behind on our planning, we're behind on our management. But if I were to be the leader of our government tomorrow, would take immediate steps to ramp up agriculture and to do so in a way that would protect us from the coming food shortages and reduce our dependence on imports in terms of managing that. Damien Campbell said, "Do you know if Andrew is a shareholder in the hotel?" No, I don't know. And you don't have to be a shareholder to benefit from having relationships with big business. There are many other ways to benefit. Some of them is to end up with large sums of monies that may not have gone through any of the regular channels. Jeremy says, "What is your stance on the wholesale scamming?" Well, my stance on scamming of any type is to eliminate it. All forms of scamming must be eliminated. Whatever they're called, whatever industry they're in, scamming is wrong. Fraud is wrong. The use of fraud or force is wrong, and so we need to eliminate them. Cardine says, "Buy food plant from Africa, seeds in other countries." Cardine, it just remind me about something very important, and it is the need for us to have a seed bank here in Jamaica. I hope that the two parties borrow that idea from me very quickly. We need to have a food bank here, sorry, not a food bank, a seed bank here in Jamaica, where we harvest and catalog and protect high quality non-GMO seeds, and so that we can continue to replenish our stocks as they go out. We should have a very serious seed bank here in Jamaica that all of our farmers can subscribe to and get high quality non-GMO seeds. We also need to get into the business of teaching our students and our farmers how to make high quality soil, how to make our own fertilizers, our own soil amendment methodologies, so that we do not have to import these things. Also, to have natural herbicides and pesticides that we develop locally here and which are based on our own local ingredients, which will allow us to stop having to import these things, and also to make sure that the pesticides and herbicides that we use and the techniques that we use in our farming are actually beneficial to the ecosystem. So it builds the ecosystem as opposed to damage the ecosystem. The methods we have right now are very damaging, and they're putting us further and further behind, even as we think it's helping us. Milton says Jamaica can grow their own food and don't buy food from America. Well, I'm not opposed to us buying anything from any country, but you're right. We can indeed become food secure and be able to produce much of the food we eat. In fact, all the food we need, we can produce it here. But of course, there are some foods that we want to have that are not produced here. That's okay for us to, for people who want it and can afford to import it. But let's make sure we have food security here. Yeah. Um, Asha is asking to solve the shortage of chicken, bring in some incubator for normal Jamaican to do their own incubating and break up the monopoly. Yeah, well, the key thing is for the government to get out of the way and make sure that you're not being charged exorbitant fees to import your incubator and start your own, chicken business, and so on. Michael White is asking, how would you embrace the Rasta community? Would you grant the community lands to cultivate idle food for themselves, but also to export? Michael, the UIC has a land, let's call it land reform. I hate to use some of those words, but Jamaica, the UIC has a land reform program which is going to ensure that all of the crown lands are divested and given to the Jamaican people in two streams. One of them is to have very large organic farms that produces massive amount of organic foods for local consumption and for export. Jamaicans will be able to own shares in those companies and therefore have a stream of dividends coming to them. Now, in terms of the Rasta and the Maroon community, I am very interested in having dialogues with those two communities to help them to settle land claim rights and so on. You might have heard of a person called Howell, trying to remember his first name. Pinnacle, the Pinnacle experience. I would like for the government to, as government, the UIC, to address that and correct the wrongs that were done to those noble Rastafarians who had built such a beautiful community at Pinnacle and were doing so well until the Jamaican government went and interfered with them and destroyed their project and destroyed their lives and destroyed their leader. So I would love to see us go and fix that problem and return the lands that were taken directly or indirectly from the Rastafarian community and give them a chance to demonstrate to Jamaica the kind of civilization that they can build. And so the UIC is one that will respect the cultural diversities that you'll find in a country where we say it's out of many that we're one. And we mean that, and we should mean that. So let's respect the rights, the freedoms, and give much opportunity and space to your full potential. Yeah. How would you protect the employees of the island whose rights have been taken away by this contract system? So, Terence, first of all, we have to make sure we describe what are the rights that are being taken away. So, as it is now, we have a lot of government regulations concerning employment in Jamaica. Much of these regulations, which are supposed to be in the best interest of employees, are actually not very good in terms of the way they function and operate. So what we have to do is to make sure that we have real labor laws, if you wish, that truly protects the rights of all citizens of Jamaica equally. And so let's allow people to enter into contracts and make sure that they can truly be on top of the rules that they want to engage under. And the role of government now is to just protect the rights of each citizen, not to dictate what an employer and an employee can agree to, but rather to ensure that you protect the rights of all citizens. And remember, employers are citizens, employees are citizens. Let's protect their rights to enter into contract and to ensure that the contract they agree to is enforceable by law, and that we don't have a case where because you are poor, you can't get your contractual rights to be honored by your employer, and or vice versa. So let's protect all Jamaicans equally. Carlene says Andrew and his MP are like Alibaba and his 63 thieves. When will you reach out to those of us who are trying to be a part of your movement but is unable to get a response from you? That is Renard Raymond. Renard, I'm not aware of persons trying to reach us. We have, you see the numbers on there. If you call that number, if you WhatsApp that number, I'm sure you'll get a response. We're overwhelmed because we do get a lot of calls and a lot of requests every day. We can't meet all of them. Please remember that I'm not a full-time politician. I have a day job. I'm an accountant. I'm a farmer. So I'm as well as a husband and a father. And so I can't be like God that is always available when you call. So, and you're not going to get me all the time because, I am in meetings, I am in other things. So and you can't get even the office administrator all the time because if she's talking to one person, then she can't talk to you at the same time. So let's try again now and keep trying until you get through. We don't have enough money to have several persons, just one person we have on the phone. Um, Sorry, that's just the way it is. We don't have the wherewithal to pay several persons to be on the phone. And so, please sympathize with us and help us to get through this. Help us by donating some more, no? And encouraging your family and friends to donate as well. Yeah. Thank you, Marva, for the diaspora support. I really appreciate it. And I must say, just so you all know, donations are up. We are getting more donations. It's not as much as we need, but it's more than before. So donations are up. So you'll see more and more activities happening, as we can find the time and space to do so. Um, I have tried, but only get an automatic response. Calls not picking up. Wasn't trying to get you directly, but the office. Yeah, man, send a WhatsApp message. Somebody should be in touch with you. All right. Asha is asking UIC off YouTube. YouTube has blocked our account, Asha. So UIC Liberty TV is down. But please, all of you can now go to UIC Jamaica on YouTube and subscribe to that channel as well. So I don't know how long they're going to lock down UIC Liberty TV for. They haven't told me what we did wrong, and they haven't told us when they're going to give us access to our account. So just go on to UIC Jamaica on YouTube. You'll find that that we haven't been using that channel before, so it has a small number of subscribers. So let's all go over there and subscribe there now. That's UIC Jamaica. You'll find it on YouTube. And later on, when we get a chance to reopen UIC Liberty TV, that will be up as well, where most of the subscribers are. But forgive me, I don't know why they shut us down. They just told us that no. I think it has something to do with some of my well, I'm sure it's because of what I'm talking about, and I've spoken about the World Economic Forum. I've spoken about the banking fraud, where the government of Jamaica has literally given away the Bank of Jamaica to the private cartel. They have also given away $20.6 billion to this banking cartel, and promised us that it would result in us having a stable economy and low inflation. Okay, none of which has happened, but they've given it away. I've also spoken about the medical emergency that has been on us for the last 2 years, and I have allowed persons to come on and give factual information about that, and maybe they don't like that very much. What would be your stance on crypto, specifically Bitcoin? Thank you for that question, Jeremy. Um, Let me take a few minutes to explain to you first what cryptocurrency is, and particularly what Bitcoin is. So, Bitcoin is a digital currency which is not controlled by a central authority, be it government or private. At least that's the story we have been fed. It is run on a blockchain system which allows it to be self-regulating. So no one person or one group of persons is able to control um, the money supply. According to the, the information fed to us, it has a built-in mechanism that will limit the amount of that currency. It is generated by mining by persons who decide to get into the business of setting up powerful computers to mine the currency. And by virtue of that, they get some currency and the system ratifies the accounting, or the ledger to say that all of the accounts are okay and there's nobody who is able to cheat the system and do double spending, like spending the same money twice, and nobody is able to counterfeit and manipulate the money supply. So that's the theory behind Bitcoin, in brief. If it is true, if all of that is true, then Bitcoin could serve as a good alternative to manipulated, fraudulent fiat currencies such as the Jamaican dollar and the US dollar or the Canadian dollar. Um, if all of that is true, then you could have that alternative. So you could be able to get that. Now, the trick is, Bitcoin is not really used so much as a form of money. It is used more as a form of investment. And I use the word investment here loosely because it is more a speculative investment than an investment based on something with a um, intrinsic value or something with a productive value. So Bitcoin has no productive value and it has no intrinsic value, um, except if you see it as a edge, something that will protect you against, say, inflation. So if you put your money there, then it will protect you from inflation. Say if you kept your money in Jamaican dollars or US dollars or Canadian dollars or whichever other currency. So as an edge, if you have the stomach for it and you feel confident that parking, converting your existing currencies into Bitcoin and holding it there, it will be a superior edge against inflation, let's say against better than gold or better than another currency. So it has turned out to be something of a speculative bubble at the moment where persons are speculating that if they were to buy Bitcoin today, the value of it is going to go up over time and probably very fast based on the fact that, and why the value goes up, right, is because others are buying into it. So the value will only keep going up as long as others are buying into it. Now, the moment others stop buying into it, then the value will come down. Or the moment people feel that it's no longer something that other people will want to buy, then the value will come down. So in that sense, Bitcoin is not operating like a currency. It's operating more like a speculative investment vehicle. Um, so for that, some of us may choose not to participate in it, while others who have a stomach for it, and who want to take that risk will go into it. But there's another side to this Bitcoin problem or idea. It's the side that government still retains the power to make it illegal. And they've done that in India, they've done that in China, and over time, more and more governments will make it illegal to own Bitcoin, which is a problem. You see, that is, comes by UIC is trying to deal with, which is to say we need to take away that power from government to simply take away our right to decide what we want to own. If I want to buy Bitcoin, that's my business, not the government's business. So, but we have lost our rights over time because we've allowed government to become this huge monster that gets to dictate what we can do with our own money, what we can do with our own lives, and so that needs to stop. But for the moment, it hasn't stopped, and you don't have a UIC government to stop it. So at any time, this government that we have now could easily pass a law that says it's illegal to own Bitcoin, and if it does that, then the value of it will drop, at least in whichever geographic area that is most impacted. They could also tax it, which they've done in the U.S. So in the U.S., if you own Bitcoin, you have to report it, and you have to report changes in valuation, and you have to pay taxes on it. Now, how do you pay taxes on it? You have to convert some of it back into US dollars, of course, to then pay your taxes because the US government does not accept Bitcoin as payment. So, all of that brings a lot of challenges and uncertainty to the space. So I hope I answered the question. Long answer, but needed to give you some background. What if you should become PM? What will be your approach towards swearing allegiances? How will you go about undoing that mess when we become a republic? The good thing is some of the undoing is already going on in the way things are, but the UIC is going to put in a new constitution. So our new constitution, you will swear allegiance to the people of Jamaica, to the constitution that protects their rights, and that will be the end of the story. Yeah. Um, uh, so yes, Asha, the UIC Liberty TV was blocked by YouTube. We can no longer stream anything live or anything like that through it. We don't know why. Yeah, they haven't told us. Michael said, how do you break up the monopoly of the 22 families running this country? Well, very easy. Monopolies can only survive by the support of government. It's government regulations that creates and supports monopolies. So once the UIC changes the constitution and reinforces the law that says you have the rights that I have already described, uh, no law or regulation can therefore be put in place that would continue to protect big business and suppress small businesses and eliminate competition from big businesses. So the UIC model of governance corrects that problem. It automatically exposes monopolies to full competition and therefore eliminates them. What are your thoughts on vertical farming in shipping containers? Good question, Douglas. I think vertical farming is great. Shipping containers, we have to look at that carefully. Remember, Jamaica is a very hot climate. Shipping containers or any kind of container farming is particularly very good in colder climates where you want to continue to farm even when temperatures are at levels that no plant can survive. Here in Jamaica, depending on what is it you want to farm, you may find that using shipping container might not be the most beneficial way to go. You can use a much cheaper alternative, which is a regular greenhouse, which allows you to regulate temperatures as well, and probably cheaper than you would if you were to try to regulate the temperature inside of a container. Just my thoughts. There might be more science to it than that you can look into and let me know. They should now allow the banks uh, charging our accounts. We prefer interest. All right, Carlene, I'm going to try to interpret what you're writing here. What you're asking is that banks should not be allowed to charge people fees, but rather pay people interest. Now, bear with me as I explain this one to you. The government should not be in the business of telling banks what they should charge for fees or whether or not they should pay interest. All the government needs to do is to make sure that the regulations are such that there is competition in the market. In other words, the regulation should make sure that the bank cannot steal your money, right? The bank cannot use force or fraud to take your money. Now, you will also have an option. You do not have to put your money in the bank. So if you have several options, if you have bank A, bank B, bank C, and the government does not prevent competition in the market, then a bank which fails to offer you incentives to put your money in their bank will lose business. And the banks which offer you incentives will gain. Yeah. And so it's very important that we don't try to solve a problem by creating more problem. And that's what we have currently in the current system. The government keeps running around creating all kinds of new laws to give you the impression that they're solving the problem that you raised, when all they're doing is creating more problems, making your life more harder, and finding new ways to protect big business from you. So what the UIC is going to do is repeal all of those foolish laws and regulations which are designed to work against you while telling you it's there for you, and allow you instead to have a truly free market, which is not protected by government, but rather a market which allows you to have diversity and have options, and for you to have the ability to challenge any of those companies in the market by creating new and better products and offering it. So, for example, in the banking sector, you want to have more novel banking options. And you can only have that if you free up the market so that ordinary Jamaicans can come up with creative ways of providing banking services to Jamaicans, creating new forms of money and so on, like cryptocurrencies of different kinds, which are backed by different kinds of assets and so on. Let's have an open market, a diverse marketplace. And that's the key, the real answer. That's how you kill monopolies. And that's how you get banks to now behave in a way that is customer friendly. It's only when they can form a banking cartel and have and fund political parties and have them write laws and regulations to protect them that you have the problems that you're having now. Question: what would your stance be in regards to visas to other countries who Okay, so I think the question from Michael is, countries that require us to have visas to go to their countries, but then we allow them to come into our country without visa. Well, that's the problem when you're a poor country. See, when you're a poor country, you're begging people to come here, especially because you're highly dependent on tourism. And when you're a rich country, you can say no to people because you don't need them. You don't need their money so much and so on. What the UIC is going to do is to make Jamaica far more attractive so that people will want to come here, and that it will be necessary at that point for us to have visa requirements to control the entry because of how good the country is and how much we want to protect the interest of the Jamaican people from having undue competition from immigration coming in. Uh, Damien is asking what you think about the gun buyback program. I think it is a ridiculous program, Damien, to have the gun buyback program because it is not going to solve the problem. It is simply going to provide monies for upgraded guns. So we're going to get a lot of old, um, you know, useless or less useful guns coming in, and we're going to be paying criminals for those guns, and then they're going to be bringing in bigger and better guns into the country. What we need to do is to fix the problem, and the problem is poor border control. So the UIC is going to turn the Jamaican Defense Force into a true border patrol mechanism that's going to stop the inflow of illegal guns and ammunition. We're going to implement a top-down crime fighting plan that will find the heads of the crime problem, the heads in the police, the heads in the politics, the heads in the business sector, and let them pay. If we cut off the head of the problem, the bottom will not be able to thrive and succeed. So we're going to have a top-down approach to crime fighting and a bottom-up approach to economic development. Joyce Smith says, why does it take over 3 months for citizens to renew an ID? It takes over 3 months because we're very inefficient and ineffective. And we have a bloated government with highly incompetent people having a chance to eat the food at our expense while not delivering the service that we need. So we're going to change that. Norman Lawrence, what would happen if it can be proven that the government or any government agencies violate a citizen's rights? Well, under a UIC system, anyone who violates a citizen's right would have committed a crime, and there will be a penalty for that, depending on the nature of the crime. Jeremy, yes, control the ports and what is being smuggled in. Absolutely. Just imagine if we, really utilized our army for border control and also for customs. So you can separate the custom from the civilian aspect and have the military at the front of the customs system and also controlling the border on a regular, active basis. Yeah, that will work. Michael, don't you think the commissioner of police should be independent of both parties? The entire police should be independent of politics. So, what you want is the kind of system the UIC has proposed for how to make these high level appointments. So, you make them through a process of checks and balances so that when you're finished, you have true separation of powers and the police can focus on policing and not being influenced by politicians. Yeah. A question from Stewart. In Jamaica, there's a lot of red tapes. If a small man wants to start a business, what would you do differently? Well, Stuart, we're going to get rid of all the red tape. Um, the UIC is the biggest anti-red tape party you'll ever see because we love the small man. We are the party of small business. We're here fully committed to making sure that the small business sector gets the fullest support from government. We're going to do everything possible to eliminate every conceivable obstacles from you starting and operating a small business. We're going to simplify the compliance requirements, simplify the tax system. We're going to make it easy to open your bank accounts. We're going to make it easy for you to receive payments and send payments. We're going to make it very, very cost effective for you to do business with the government. Very low fees, very low taxes, and very little requirements. So we're going to minimize the requirements so that everything takes a shorter time and takes less money so you can actually focus on building your business. So the UIC is the most business friendly government you will ever have. And not just business friendly, but small and micro business friendly. Yeah. I saw a lot of foreign Asians taking up our local jobs. They should be offering their skills. That's Carlene again. Carlene, yes, the Asians, Chinese and Indians, and others are doing an excellent job of taking over Jamaica because our government is doing an excellent job of selling out Jamaica. So as long as we have a government that is suppressing the people of Jamaica, you're gonna see more of that. We're gonna stop that. The justice system is a mess. How would you fix the department? I respect how you talk. Bless up, said Terrence. Thank you, Terrence. The justice system, first of all, has to be truly independent. So we're going to fix that with the UIC model of governance, which I've talked about elsewhere and will refer to again in another series. But most importantly, you must make sure that the justice system is independent of one's economic position. So you must make it easy for the citizens to challenge the government in court. You must make it easy for those who are victims of any form of crime, whether it's done by elected or unelected officials, can easily access the justice system and have their cases looked at. One of the things they have to do is to make a crime a crime. So the poor person doesn't have to go to court, meaning they don't have to bring a case forward. Once a crime is committed, the state, once it's aware of the crime, has the responsibility to prosecute. So you see, like the other day, that fellow, Mr. Wright, beat up his girlfriend or whatever she was, and it was up to her to press charges. We wouldn't have that in the New Jamaica. Once that alleged problem has occurred, then the state will prosecute. Whether or not the victim wants to press charges or not, it doesn't matter. The state will prosecute, and the victim will have to give a statement, and the offender will have to give a statement, and both will be brought before the courts, and justice will be served. Um, what is your stance on God and devotion in school? Stewart is asking. Um, I believe strongly in protecting religious liberty. That is the right of a person to worship as he or she chooses or not. I do not believe in state-sponsored religion. So government must stay out of the religion space except to the extent that it's protecting your right to exercise and to follow your chosen religious path, provided that that religion does not involve you using force or fraud to violate the life, liberty, or property rights of others. But as a government, we will not support or oppose any religion. We will not sanction or seek to in any way interfere with a person's right to follow their chosen religious path. So when it comes down to schools, we have a different model of schooling that we have proposed, which is a more diverse and open school system that will allow for schools who want to have religious practices to have them as part of their schools, and schools who don't to not have them, and for parents to have the ultimate choice as to which school to send their children to. And so you might have a parent who want their child to go to a Rastafarian school or a Muslim school or a Christian school. They'll be able to do that. Will the president of the executive powers under the UIC? So JMH, the president will be the chief executive officer and will be the head of the executive branch of government. He or she will be kept in check by the legislative branches, which will be independent of it. Um, so that will be a much better system. Australia is one such country. They can't enter without your skills trained. No unskilled is allowed to take local jobs. Gotcha, Carlene. Yes, you don't want to have outside persons with um, that are not needed to come in and take jobs in Jamaica. So a company would have to apply to the government to say they cannot find the local skills they need here and therefore have to import it, and that has to be justified. Why are we paying ministers who are not experts in the field, then having to pay the advisors? Great question, Yannick. And so, Yannick, the UIC system of governance is going to stop that. We're going to have MPs focus on being MPs and senators focus on being senators. And instead, we will have the executive branch of government nominating, that's the core executive, the president, nominating qualified and competent persons to be ministers of government. And they will then be vetted by the Senate and voted in by the House. And so we will no longer have the problem you're describing. So you'll no longer have MPs serving as ministers. They're going to focus on taking care of their constituency, and we're going to have qualified people running our ministries. Richard Grant says farmers often receive subsidy from the government in the form of farm inputs such as seeds, fertilizer, etc. What impact does this have on the agricultural sector? Do you think it's okay for taxpayers' monies to be used to I can't see the rest of the question, but I get it. The UIC is 100% opposed to the practice you have described. What we want is a true market economy where farmers are business people and they must be trained and developed to run a business and not to be dependent on government subsidy. What the government should do is to make sure that the infrastructure, the public infrastructure, is such that farmers have what they need to be able to then invest in their own businesses and run them. We will also provide advice and information that farmers can access in order to make good decisions. But you are correct, we should not be taxing some people to subsidize other people, no matter who they are. For public goods and services, we tax people to pay the public servants. But farmers, like everybody else, needs to be able to run their own business. Now, of course, in the transition from where we are to where we need to be, we're going to have to do some remedial actions to bring our farmers up to speed and to let them, head out, to do their thing. Unfortunately, they have been spoiled, they have been misguided, misdirected, and that has destroyed our agricultural sector. So we have to do it properly. Cool Guy says, one of my greatest fear is that the diaspora, more so than local Jamaicans, are the biggest supporters of the movement. Please tell me I am wrong. Cool Guy, you are wrong and you're also right. It is true that because the local media has blocked us out from the Jamaican people, many Jamaicans still have not heard about us because the business elite that owns the local media, radio, television, and newspaper, have made a deliberate effort to keep us away from the public eye. And so that makes it very hard. It's very simple, every single public issue that comes to the fore, the Jamaican people hear two voices. The media goes to the JLP and say, what is going on? And then they go to the PNP and say, what is your response? Very, 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 very rare, except when it is strategic, will they come to the UIC and ask for our input and then share that with the general public. The diaspora, on the other hand, they have access to internet in a way that local Jamaicans do not. When a diaspora want to sit down and watch a 1.5 hour video like this one, they can easily watch it and not worry about data because the setup in their country is very different from here. Here in Jamaica, the Jamaican has to worry about data access and data cost. So they don't have the freedom to consume online data the way those in the diaspora do. And so naturally, because the diaspora is hearing the UIC and has access to the UIC, and they realize that the UIC is the best thing for Jamaica, then they are strong supporters. Yeah. I'm a bit worried now. What am I hearing from you sounds way too good to be true. My concerns are Jamaicans ready for such huge change on the one hand, and what might the current crop of movers and shakers do about such a threat at this time on the other? Well, Lloyd Kelly, here's the thing. Whether what I'm saying sounds too good to be true and whether or not Jamaicans are ready for it doesn't change the fact that staying the status quo means absolute destruction for the country. So we have three options before us. Option one, we continue with the two and get more of the same. Option two, we stop voting, just detach from the system. We'll still have the two and get more of the same. And option three is to give the UIC a chance to correct the problem and lead Jamaica into a new future. It's up to us. If we don't choose wisely, whatever we think, whether we think it's too good to be true or not, if we don't choose wisely, Jamaica is in serious trouble. I'm going to ask you again, what will you do about the CCTV across Jamaica and body cam for the security forces? Thank you, Dwayne, for asking. I didn't see your question before. They're moving off the screen very fast sometimes. Eh? Uh, I don't know what you mean by what will you do about CCTV across Jamaica. I believe it's important for us to have cameras strategically placed to help us monitor the general environment and to help reduce crime, but we have to be careful about privacy of our citizens. That's very important. And secondarily, I do believe in body cam. I believe that we should have dashboard cameras and body cameras on our police to help to better understand how they're policing and to better protect the rights of Jamaicans. Hope that answers the question. Ione, let's see here. So she's praying for a victory. So am I. Thank you very much. Asha, will the UIC invest in a TV or radio station? Well, right now, Asha, we can hardly invest in paying for transportation and printing material and buying phone credit and data. Because again, we do not get funding from big business. We rely on you, small donors, for funding. So if we have the money, yes, we will. Right now, we don't. Would you embrace bringing back Air Jamaica and having a more of a direct link, which is only 5 hours from Jamaica, with Africa in areas of trade and tourism? Michael, we definitely welcome Air Jamaica coming back to Jamaica, and we definitely would love to have direct flights with Africa. And for that to happen, we have to build a strong economy and liberate our people so that they can actually invest in that economy and grow it. And that's exactly what the UIC is going to do. If I'm a big business and want to donate, would the UIC accept it? Steve Lynn, yes, if you're a big business and want to donate, the UIC will accept it, provided it comes with no strings attached. If you subscribe to our mission, vision, and values and wish to donate to support those, we will fully accept it. The moment you want to give us a donation and change the vision, mission, values, or objectives, then we're going to say no. Good night, Horace Johnson. Good to see you on. How are things over there in Western Kingston? Carlene, welcome back. She says we've been dying by the thousands a year on the PNP and GOP. We don't want to continue dying like that in Jamaica. Absolutely. Having over 2,000 murders a year is just unacceptable. Having people living behind burglar bars is just unacceptable. Having women and children not being able to walk freely without worrying about being kidnapped or abducted is just unacceptable. It's time for us to have a safe Jamaica. And the only way we're going to do that is if we come to terms with why we have a crime problem. We have a crime problem because the two major parties have invested heavily in criminal enterprise during the early years. And that created a symbiotic relationship between politics and criminals. And that has mushroomed into a culture of crime and violence that is now out of control and requires a new political party that is not tainted and connected in any way to be able to take the tough decisions without being implicated in the process. And so that's why Jamaicans must now make a decision to sever ties with those two parties and by extension, sever ties with the criminal underworld as well. That's all the questions for tonight. I want to thank you very much for your participation, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Take care, and much blessings to you and your family. Good night.